Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to win at AI search. Super excited to be chatting with everyone today and hopefully providing some good information and some insight into how B2B brands can optimize for generative search engines. So as people are trickling in, I will go ahead and do a couple of housekeeping items here. One, for those of you who may not be familiar with Nexus, want to give you a quick overview of our agency. I know that we've got a number of current clients and partners on the call today, but lots of new faces as well. So Nexus Marketing is a digital marketing agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We are specialized in revenue and inbound lead generation through digital marketing, and we specifically work with businesses that are serving mission-driven industries. So typically our clients are either software or service providers that are selling to nonprofits, educational institutions, healthcare organizations, associations, and then some faith-based organizations as well. Lots of overlap between those different verticals, which is why we use that broader mission-driven language. But really, our focus is how do we get our clients in front of the right people online, and how do we convert that audience into actual leads and revenue? So SEO, GEO, digital event strategy, email marketing, like all of those things kind of fall into that bucket there. A couple of other housekeeping items here. We do have a member of our team in the chat, so if you have any technical issues, please feel free to let them know, and they can help you troubleshoot. We also feel free to use the chat function, for comments or thoughts throughout the session, also for questions. And we do have a dedicated questions section as well. It's in the bottom right hand of your screen, I believe. So you can leave your questions there, and hopefully we'll have some time to answer those at the end of the session. Alrighty, so final thing before we kind of dive into content, I would love to get a sense, and I've just published the poll, so I'll be excited to see where kind of this current group is. Would love to get a sense of, just based on who's in the room right now, where are we in terms of GEO? Maybe you haven't started yet, or you don't have any idea where to start. Maybe you're starting to think about it. Either you're already implementing GEO strategies. Maybe you're just like, well, I'm going to continue what I'm doing on an SEO front and hope for the best. So let's see. Lots of people who are in the planning stages, it looks like. A couple people, in the haven't started, already implementing. Okay, great. Love to see how many people are already starting to implement some GEO strategies. That is fabulous. Okay, so I will go ahead. I will hop out of the poll here, and we can go ahead and get started. So where I would love to start our discussion today is really thinking through, what are some of the core challenges with AI search for marketers? And so when we are thinking about the future of AI search, what does that look like? And what are really, again, kind of the core kind of existential problems that we as marketers are facing? A couple of things pop out to me as really critical. One is that the tracking tools are still very new, very much in their infancy. And the data they provide is, at this point, I would say imperfect and incomplete. And that might be being kind. SEMrush, for example, has a newly rolled out AI-focused tool. SE Ranking has one. But these tools, again, are very much in their infancy. And it's difficult to really understand the quality and the accuracy of their data. And so it's difficult. We don't have the robust suite of tools that we do from an SEO perspective. The other thing that's really tough, that I've run into with a couple of different organizations that I've talked to recently, is there's just not public data on the number of people who are searching for different queries in a given time period. I was talking to someone recently where they were like, well, what is the value of GEO versus SEO, and how do we know how many searches these are getting a month versus some of these SEO searches? And the tough thing is, the answer right now is that there isn't really a way to know. I think what we can look at is the amount of general users that are starting to shift into using generative search versus Google. We can look at the amount of traffic you're seeing from these tools, but there is not a clear way to understand exactly how many people are searching for specific topics. The other challenging thing, that I definitely want to sympathize with these tools on is you could, ask 100 tiny variations of the same long form query to an AI tool. I think probably there's just a much wider variation of the language people are putting into the tool versus the language they're using for Google when they're using some of these, relatively standard keywords versus these longer form prompts. So just another one there. Another key concern is that generative AI tools are pulling information from sources other than your website. When you think about like your traditional SEO, yes, whether or not your content ranks on page one, some of that is right within your control, some of it is outside of your control. But if that page is ranking, when someone clicks into that page, everything on that page in your website is within your control. You can have the ability to touch every single thing that shows up on that page. Now with generative AI tools, right, they're pulling maybe a little bit here from your website, a little bit here from your website, maybe something from your LinkedIn, maybe something from review sites or articles that have been published about your content, or a webinar that one of your team members run. It's pulling stuff from all different sources. It just makes it a lot harder to control the narrative around your brand. And then of course, things are changing really fast and new things are rolling out every day. Best practices are, fluctuating and changing in some ways. And so just trying to keep abreast of the situation and keep up to date kind of is that inherent challenge in and of itself. The other thing I want to highlight here is that, all of those things are tacked on to this idea that there is a huge increase in, for example, ChatGPT users. And so when we think about like this really, really rapidly growing channel that we don't necessarily right now have a huge amount of insight into. So I think that's just, inherently it's kind of scary. It's a little daunting. I think there are a lot of questions about it. Everyone knows that this is kind of the future and it's important, right? I mean, I think ChatGPT is on track to have 1 billion monthly users by the end of the year. And yet there are all of these limitations and questions. So something to think about. And, I think it's useful when, to kind of frame the conversation. Now, the good news, before it's all like doom, gloom, all the scary things, is that GEO and SEO best practices are highly, highly connected. So a lot of the things that you are already doing or already have the capabilities to be doing on the SEO front are going to benefit your GEO strategy as well. Those fundamentals are really overlapping, which is, again, the good news. So how to take advantage of both channels and what kinds of activities are going to be really beneficial for both channels. When we think about SEO and GEO, a lot of the core principles of what those two, things are the same fundamentally. The goal is to satisfy user intent, whether that is on Google with one comprehensive piece of content, or whether that's, on ChatGPT with a result or some sort of answer that is being generated and pulled from different sources. The goal is to answer the question. User has a question, we're trying to answer it. That inherent goal is the same across platforms. Again, content quality, absolutely non-negotiable. You need to make sure that you have the highest quality, most comprehensive content you can possibly have across your website, but particularly for the core topics that are most important, particularly from a product standpoint. So content quality, again, across both, super important. Structure supports visibility. So when I say that, basically what I mean is that is your content structured in a way that makes it very easy to understand, to digest, and to read? Do you have clear headers that are separating out different sections that make it very clear what's answering? Do you have subheadings that are not just using keywords, right, from an SEO perspective, but are, maybe mimicking queries or questions that users might be asking on ChatGPT? So making sure that your content is structured in a way that makes it really digestible, obviously, right, from that reader's perspective, but also from the perspective of these LLMs. Ongoing optimization is another piece that's really important, making sure that your content is fresh and up to date. This idea, maybe this kind of older idea of what an LLM is, where it was trained on a certain set of content, and then that's where it was pulled from. That is no longer the case. All of these LLMs use a process called retrieval augmented generation, where they will, right, use the internet unless you specifically tell it not to. They will bounce that query and it'll scrape the internet for answers and have citations that it's pulled. And so, you want to make sure that your content is up to date, best practices, newest information, fresh, all of those things. That's really important across both SEO and GEO. And then with your website, it needs to have a sound technical foundation. The core piece of whether or not your website is able to be crawled, whether that's by an LLM or that's by Google, that foundational piece. Are your pages fast loading? Are they easy to find? Are they indexable? All of those things, super important across both. So again, I think before we get into this, like, oh my God, we know nothing about GEO, so scary, like, these fundamental pieces are absolutely consistent across both channels. Our recommendation would be to start with, again, those strong SEO fundamentals. Let's not totally reinvent the wheel here, especially when the best practices are overlapping. So what I would recommend to do first is take a really frank and honest look at your content. If it's not good enough to rank organically on Google, it is likely not going to get cited well on AI platforms. Those criteria are not the exact same. Like, that's not a perfect one-to-one, but generally, if your content is underperforming from an SEO standpoint, that's an indicator that it is pretty likely to underperform on AI platforms. So thinking through, from a business perspective, what are your core pages that are most important for, that buyer customer journey? Do those perform well? If they don't, why don't they? Are they not comprehensive enough compared to the rest of the content out there? Is it older content? Like, whatever that might be, it's a really crucial place to start. Next is, of course, having that regular cadence for monitoring your website for technical issues. This is a really standard one, but it matters for GEO as well. Obviously, it matters for SEO. And then finding strategic opportunities for your brand to be cited on other reputable websites. So, I think from that traditional SEO perspective, we typically think of those offsite opportunities as opportunities for backlinks. How can we improve the backlink profile of your website, point, links back to specific pages that you want to rank, all of those good things. But those offsite brand references are also going to directly benefit your AI visibility. So, is your brand, again, whether or not like the link is present, I think is less relevant from an AI standpoint, the way that it is for an SEO standpoint. But are your core team members contributing thought leadership to other sites? Are they, putting themselves out there as knowledgeable authors on the topics that you want to be showing up for on AI visibility? One opportunity here is like thinking through, if you're a software provider, How do you go and reach out to all of your integration partners and say, hey, we would love to contribute an educational piece on whatever topic to your blog, your newsletter, like whatever that looks like, attribute that to our team, attribute that to our CEO, our chief product officer, our chief marketing officer, like whatever, whatever that looks like specifically for your organization. But, creating that overall sense of brand authority and brand presence across the industry is really, really important. And again, these activities play double duty across both SEO and GEO. This one is like, slightly different reasonings behind the same activity, but the same activity is going to pull its weight on both fronts. So again, that's kind of where we would recommend starting, is where are the activities that you are going to see a strong lift across both platforms. The other thing I'd really highly recommend is thinking about, as you're creating content, how are you tailoring your content with LLMs in mind, whether you're going back and improving previous content that you've already created or you're creating new content. So for B2B brands, product questions and product comparisons should really be a top priority. So whether that's FAQ sections, top provider lists that have direct comparisons or pros and cons, both really valuable options. One thing that I think is really interesting, I was having a conversation with an organization recently that is in the alumni engagement space in higher ed. And so I had put into ChatGPT, as to kind of understand how that brand specifically is or is not, right, getting cited and how it's being discussed. I typed in, right, I just went into ChatGPT, said, what are the best alumni engagement tools for higher ed? Reasonable question, right? If I were someone working at a university or a college and I was looking for a solution, something I could reasonably, right, look up. And what, had a couple of things, but the real part that I wanted to screenshot here, and it's a little bit small, but basically what it has is it has a bunch of different platforms listed. Then it's got one column where it talks about what it's good at or its strengths. And then another column where it talks about, potential weaknesses, things to look out for. So one, wanting to understand, when you're asking these types of questions, like you are talking directly about, or you're being talked about in direct comparison, right, to competitors. So, I think lots of people shy away from top providers lists. I think sometimes it can make organizations nervous because, you don't necessarily want to be bad mouthing a competitor. And I don't think that's what, anyone should be aiming for with these top providers lists, but it's a great opportunity to shape the narrative around, here's how we want to position our product and what we are best at and the organizations that are the best fit for this product versus some of these other areas, because that is what these tools are doing. And so you can be a part of shaping that narrative. I'm actually going to pull up in a minute. I've got kind of a different piece on what pages were cited for this query. And it's really interesting. Most of the web pages that this response cited were top providers pages. So thinking through, how can your content effectively answer the types of questions that your clients and customers are asking, and how can you really straightforwardly outline what you would want those answers to be, and making sure that that narrative is out there and present for the LLMs to find. So thinking through that, I think again, like with the FAQs as well, writing them in the format of like, what kinds of questions would somebody be asking? Literally go in and answer those. Like go on your page, write out those types of questions that someone might be putting into ChatGPT, and literally just answer the question. Make it conversational, make it easy to read, easy to digest, all of those things. And that makes it more likely that you're going to get directly cited if you've got a clear, concise, complete answer to the question that's being asked. Last piece here is, wanting to talk about leaning into brand and author credibility. So this piece around why your product, why your company, why is your team authoritative on this subject? Why should anyone listen to you, right? It's always been kind of the question for SEO, but there are a lot of other factors. For SEO, oftentimes like the backlinking can be that clearest signal of authority versus some of these other signals that that AI tools are using. So are you highlighting the impact of your products and services consistently across your website? Do you have testimonials? Do you have client logos? Do you have statistics? Thinking through your case studies. Do you have case studies? Are they up to date? Are they really straightforward and clear about the impact that has been had? All of those things really, really important. Because again, you're not just relying on the quality of a single page. You're thinking through how is your brand being perceived as a whole. So the more consistently you can have these kind of social proof elements across your website, the better. Are you incorporating credible data from authoritative sources in your content? Why is your content any good, right? Why should anyone trust what you have to say? Having those types of statistics, whether that's, stuff that you found yourself from your own clients, making sure that's very clear, pulling in stats from different publications or research organizations in your industry, really, really valuable. AI tools very much value those types of statistics. They're often, citing those statistics. And so if you can have those on your site, you are more likely to be referenced. And then also, are you highlighting the expertise and experience of your thought leaders? Do you have author pages on your site for your various team members talking about their expertise in the space, their experience? Do you have kind of the story of your founders and how your business started, especially if it's maybe a newer business with like a very clear founder story and a founder that's still involved? So anyways, just a bunch of thoughts there around really leaning into brand and author credibility. I think it's increasingly important for LLMs, especially because they're looking, again, across many different areas, not just your own individualized content. So a couple of frequently asked questions. One that I've gotten a lot and we've talked about a lot is, how do user ratings and reviews factor into AI visibility? And the tough answer to this question is nobody is 100% sure, and there is not like a clear answer to this. So going back to the query I had put in around what are the best fundraising tools for, or maybe it was alumni engagement tools for higher ed, this section on user ratings and sentiment did pop up as part of that query. Now, I think what is interesting is, they talk about Almabase having roughly, their score on Capterra, but they don't talk about any other of these review platforms. They reference GiveCampus, for example, but GiveCampus actually wasn't one of the tools originally referenced in that table that I showed you. So, I think it is not something to be ignored, but I think there's also a question about how much it is weighted. And then on the right here, I've got the citations from that same query, where basically of the top 5 sources that ChatGPT cited, giving me that response, 4 of them were top provider pages from platforms, or from companies that are talking about their product amongst others. And then one was kind of a traditional like top provider category page from one of these like software review sites. But again, one that I wasn't even really familiar with. It wasn't any of the major ones. It wasn't Capterra, wasn't Trust Radius, wasn't G2. So I think it is a valid concern about how your users are talking about your product online, but I think it's an open question about how those factor in across other areas. What I would suggest doing is going into ChatGPT like you are one of your potential customers and asking some questions around, what are the best X product? Can you compare some top products? What are the top rated products, right? Like that language of rated would likely pull up more of those types of sites, and just get a sense for what your specific product category is. What are the types of content that's being referenced, and then how can you emulate that or adjust your strategy, right? So if you're, say, a hospital EHR software, and you go in and you do a bunch of stuff and you're seeing, man, the Capterra is the number one, like every single response I'm getting, it's pulling stuff from Capterra. Well, in that case, you should probably think about what's your strategy to getting your happiest clients reviewing you on Capterra. But that is not going to be the case for everybody. I think truly I would recommend doing a deeper dive into your own specific situation. Reddit's another one that I've gotten questions about. In my personal experience, I have not seen a lot of Reddit threads being referenced on ChatGPT. I also, to be honest, I use ChatGPT in a primarily professional capacity. I don't use it very much in my personal life. And so that's also potentially a biasing factor there, that ChatGPT, if I was asking more about maybe more consumer products or things like that are more likely to be getting discussed on things like Reddit, that might increase that. But from my perspective, of someone who has been primarily using it in a professional capacity, I have seen hardly any Reddit threads being referenced in the last year that I've been using ChatGPT in various capacities for my own work. And so I think again, take that all with a grain of salt, but it's not something I would be particularly worried about from a B2B perspective. Another one here is, how do you track whether or not you're getting traffic from LLMs? There are some pretty straightforward ways to track referral traffic in your Google Analytics. This is not anything like groundbreaking, but hopefully this can be useful. And there's lots of great resources online, like on YouTube and stuff around how to do that specifically and how to troubleshoot some of those things. I would say tracking referral traffic is one of the more concrete ways to understand whether or not you're getting traffic. The other thing that I would really highly recommend is in your contact form, if you don't already have kind of a "how did you hear about us" section, really highly recommend adding that. But assuming you already have one, updating that to include LLMs or AI tools, or even, having your sales team or your onboarding team, like whoever is the one fielding inbound leads and taking those conversations, having them ask. I think a lot of that, yes, it's anecdotal data, but I do think that can be really valuable in understanding where those leads are coming from. So something to think about. Again, the tools here they're not good, in my opinion, or they are not good enough yet, I should say. So something to think about, but there definitely are ways to utilize what you're already doing to be able to start to get a sense of how things are going here. So finally here, we've got, how we approach GEO. We've created proprietary scorecards where we have 60 plus factors that we look at across various areas, both focused on brand and authorship, where we will look at basically score our clients on how they are doing, and then create a laundry list of activities that are going to improve their performance in different areas. So if anyone is curious about what this approach looks like, or would be interested in potentially having Nexus do an audit of your site from a GEO perspective, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you are, of course, if you're a Nexus client currently, you're on the call and you'd like to talk more about GEO, please reach out to your account managers. They would be thrilled to talk about this with you and figure out how to incorporate some of these activities into your existing engagements. All right, I'm going to move to questions now, but I'm going to quickly, while I do that, put this poll live. Would love to get a sense from the group again, what additional resources would be valuable. I'm happy to send out some follow-up resources that can be a little bit more personalized to y'all. So please let me know what would be most valuable for you. Happy to share our knowledge and our best practices and hopefully kind of lift everyone here. All right. It is 2:30. I have talked too much, but I will start to get into some questions. All right. Okay, a couple here that we've already kind of covered. Oh, here's one that's been upvoted. Does the structure of our content get crawled the same way, in similar ways to how existing search algorithms crawl? Yes. So, the bots that like ChatGPT and all these tools use are crawling your content pretty much, from a technical standpoint, the same way. So all of the things that you're thinking around, crawlability, indexability, all of those things that are really important. Absolutely, yes. The structure should be the same. That those best practices carry across both SEO and GEO. All right. We already talked a little bit about, is there any insight into how much weight AI search tools put on search results versus review websites versus Reddit, et cetera? Jonathan, great question. We talked about that. There is no data around that. I think similarly, right, even with SEO, like there's always been debate around what types of factors weight more heavily. In my personal experience, generally content that ranks well from an organic standpoint does get cited more in AI responses. That is what I, again, generally have seen and what we've seen across most of our clients, but there isn't any necessarily like concrete or third-party data to know exactly how those are weighted. How does AEO fit with GEO? That is a great question. So really AEO and GEO are pretty much the same thing. I think it's interesting. The industry has not quite decided what to call like AI tool optimization. Generative engine optimization is a common one that we're seeing across specifically like the marketing world, but they do not require fundamentally different strategies. It is absolutely more about like creating higher quality content that will end up serving both of those purposes. All right. Any other, let's see. A question from Debbie in the chat. Do case studies have to be in text format or can they be in video format? Great question. I would say both and. In general, text case studies, like your traditional web pages, totally are still going to serve the same purpose. Those are great. We find that incorporating types of multimedias like video, graphics, things like that is really valuable for content. Those types of things like videos absolutely can be referenced by AI tools. So my recommendation would be to have your traditional library of case studies and then to augment those pages with ideally video testimonials from your clients that can speak to the content of the case study, but making sure that all of those most important things like impact metrics, timeline, activities, like things like that are also on page. I would say if you could only do one, probably on page is going to be better. That is just, there's a lot clearer understanding of how that content is crawled and understood. But there's great evidence to suggest that video really augments those resources. So would highly recommend, if you can, focusing on both if possible. All right. I think that was all our questions. I will go ahead and let y'all go. Apologies for going a few minutes over. And so if you're still here, thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate it. I hope the session was valuable. So for those of you who selected some additional resources in the polls, I will reach out later today or first thing tomorrow with those resources. You might also get a call from me, with some questions around what you're currently doing, so I can make sure I'm sending the most tailored resources to you. But absolutely appreciate your time. And if you do want a copy of this session, of the recording, please let me know. I'm happy to forward that along as well. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.